welcome to our 19th episode of When Life Feels Messy, our
Hi.
Hello, our April 2024 podcast. And as you could tell from the title, we'll be tapping into a topic that's relevant to this time of year as some of our students are graduating and moving on to bigger and better things in their career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we'll be talking about that transition from student to professional,
Yeah, all the fun things with that.
all the fun things. And I just want to put it out there too that we won't be tapping into everything. These are just like some um general big ideas that stood out to us the most, and also like reflecting on our own journey from student to professional.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope this plants some seeds into getting you thinking about your future and what's to come. Yay. It's a big
Yay.
season of change.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Yeah. So to start, let's start with change, right? Change in your overall needs as an individual. So for a long time, maybe your identity was like, I'm a professional student.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, in my journey through grad school, and also hear of current students of like they professors and other mentors they have, or even maybe even some connections they have in the clinical rotations, that they try to teach you to put in the mindset of like, I am a nurse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I am a PT already, or I am a therapist already. Let me put on that therapist hat. Let me put on like my nurse hat. So just that change in like how you're identifying yourself. Like you are no longer a student in college.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and with that, you no longer need to get that perfect grade,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sometimes we're just getting through it to get that perfect grade, to get that score that we need. Like we're over here calculating how many points we need and like what score we
Right.
need to pass.
Yeah.
And that worry, that fear almost just goes away, but it doesn't go away completely in terms of like we still are fearful of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
worried about stuff, but we don't need that to be worried about a grade or if we're going to pass because you did it. You did the thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, with that, your academic goals no longer become your main focus, right? They no longer come before your other needs, like your physical self,
Right.
your mental, your emotional, and your social or spiritual needs. Like you have other needs
Mm-hmm.
besides getting that perfect grade or passing that class or getting your degree.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. So now you have all that extra time and space.
Right. Yeah. And then also like I think transitioning into feeling like we can fill those cups up. Like I think we get
Mm-hmm.
so used to the student mindset of like grind, 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 like try to like pass and make it through the program, right? Like, and so a lot of times we put our needs on the back burner, but like now's
Mm-hmm.
the time where we have more time and more space to do it. But are we intentional about it, right? Like, are we keeping that in mind and a priority? Or are we gonna like continue to burn out?
Exactly. Exactly. Right. But one thing that we do know that becomes like a big focus leading up to graduation, after graduation, is the need to secure a well-paying job.
Mm-hmm.
So that includes having health insurance, making
Oh
sure
yeah.
you get some retirement benefits. That worry and that thought like increases a lot.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, like, and I don't know if this is your experience, Ash, but for when I work with clients, and it's like, our focus for the first couple years is very much like, how do I survive? How do I not burn out? Right? Like all these things. How do I fight the imposter syndrome and the feelings of incompetency? And then
Mm-hmm.
it's like we get into the last semester and a couple months before graduation, something like switches.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, oh crap, right? Like now I'm about to go into a career and a job,
Mm-hmm.
like, and there's already this other fear, but then it's like, how many loans have I taken out? What are my student loans going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so what do I need salary wise from a job? What do I want in terms of like schedule? And also, too,
Mm-hmm.
like, now we need benefits, we need like retirement, incentives. So it is like I almost think of it as like when adulting slaps you.
Oh,
It just
literally.
hits, and then you're like, oh, like, wow, like I didn't even really think about this before. And so, yeah, it's so interesting when you see that come up in sessions.
Yeah. And I really wish that would be part of like graduate or any like professional curriculum is like
Mm-hmm.
just a course, just some type of seed planted of like the profession, like being a professional in the professional world with like these things, like these life things.
Yeah,
That's
like,
not just about like the specific tasks and duties on the job.
yeah, that's a good point, right? Like the logistics of even being an adult and a professional, like
Yeah.
versus like the ethical legal things that you have to make sure like you do and don't do kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, I think again, right? Like that could be a point of where education kind of misses the mark all throughout, like not just in higher ed, but K through
Mm-hmm.
12 too. So
Mm-hmm.
anyone out there listening that's in charge of that, maybe that would be a great idea and we'd love to help.
Yeah.
But I think like that's a good transition though
Mm-hmm.
into just even thinking about like the new stressors that come up for
Mm-hmm.
like students, especially in like that last semester, maybe even like in the second to last, but I feel like I see it a lot more in the last one. Because they're like, okay, it's here. I can actually like tangibly taste graduation.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole process of applying for jobs, like
Mm-hmm.
I literally, when I think about that, even as a adult and a professional that's been in this field for almost 5 years, like it still
Mm-hmm.
makes my stomach turn because it's
Same.
just such a gnarly process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, like there's not enough preparation for like survival mode of being a student straight into interviewing or the whole process or how to sell yourself essentially.
Correct.
And like it almost feels like two different worlds. But
Mm-hmm.
like is something that we do, right? Like this is something that has to be done. Like you're going through this education for a reason. So
Yep.
unless it's just, like you decided you don't want to do this anymore or whatever, like most likely you're going to be looking for a job. And so
Mm-hmm.
like thinking about like one of the big things that's really pushed and really important is like am I networking, right? Am I connecting with people in this profession, and building those relationships, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
that's not even just like our peers or professors or even cohorts above us or below us, it's people in the field out in the community, right?
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, that can be very daunting. That can be very overwhelming, especially because it's like, where do I begin? Right. And how do
Yeah.
you like even start that?
Yes.
And also thinking about like, what companies do I want to work for? Like researching that, like, do their values align with mine? Is it like something like the pay and salary for the position feels like accurate for me? Like, I can't tell you how many times I hear of like grad students that see these positions that are paying like 50, 60K. And they're like, I just got so much in debt from this.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that's like barely anything. And so it's
Exactly.
like doing the research to make sure like what budget, right? And what do I feel like is the market value for like this profession, right?
Yep.
Because that's a quick way to burn out and not want to be in the field anymore, just FYI.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole other level of stress and things. And then like the whole resume and cover letter creating. And I cringe a little because as a former career counselor, like I would never want to look at a resume and cover letter again. Like I could go the rest of my life without that. So like it's a thing. Like everyone is like, what do I do for my resume? What do I do for my cover letter? There's so much information out there of like what you put, what you don't put. People have different ideas. Like that's stressful, right? But it's
Very.
something we have to do because we have to have that stuff to be able to send to employers.
Mhm.
And then also the big one is how to freaking interview, right? Like,
Yep.
how do I not only know how to interview effectively, right? And be able to answer these questions, right? Or almost be able to like kind of know like what are they going to be looking for, right? Like in this and be prepared. But it's also like, how do I ask them questions when they say, do you have any questions for us at the end, right? Or how do I, if I've made it through the process and now they're offering me a job, how do I negotiate that pay, right? Like, or
Hmm.
negotiate benefits or flexibility in schedule or whatever that may be. Everyone has different ideas of what feels good incentive wise, but like those are really like big things. And it's again, it's a huge shift from I'm trying to read this textbook, retain this information to pass this test, or learn these skills to be able to help like my patients in clinicals and rotations. And then major mind shift to what do I freaking put on a resume and how do I answer a question? Like it's a big process, right? And I don't
Yep.
think like it's talked about enough. And I also don't think it's preparing students enough just from like what I hear in general. And this isn't just a TWU, this is across the board, right? Like people just don't feel prepared for that student to professional transition.
Exactly. No, like they do teach you the skills and like how to be in the role when you are in the role, but like what is the help? What is the like learning journey of like how to get you there?
Right. Yeah.
And that's an also great transition to like, let's say you do start a new position or you are thinking about your what your options are, or even just paying attention to a change in your routine. Like you're no longer this student, you no longer have the student schedule, right? For a long time, your daily and weekly schedule was mostly decided for you, right? I got to go to class at this time. I have this exam on this day. I got to be at clinicals on these days and this time. I have these deadlines for these things by this day. And it was kind of pretty much outlined for you. And that could have really like brought forth a feeling of like, I have no control. And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, you're like expected to graduate and you're like looking at that finish line and then you realize like you have so much control
Mm-hmm.
of what like your life could look like. And it's really important to know that after graduation you get to choose and decide how you want to structure your schedule, and not just your work schedule, your life schedule, right? Like
Yeah.
what do you want your daily routine to be? How early would you want to wake up? Are you an early bird? Do you want to work nights? Right? How many
Mm-hmm.
days would you like to work? How many days do you not want to work? Right? Um, Noticing that when you're transitioning out of the academic world, it's also an opportunity to notice yourself and how you treat yourself
Mm-hmm.
during these big changes and how you cope with these healthy or positive changes. Like noticing, am I just like dissociating all the time because now I have to make all these big decisions on my own? And before, all I had to decide was when I'm going to study, who I was going to study with, what I had to eat, when I was going to wake up. But now, like right before, like after graduation, you are making these big life decisions. Like you do have that power of saying, no, actually, I don't want to work on the weekends, or
Right.
I don't want to work 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
What positions can help me with that flexibility?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Another big thing is noticing how you're taking care of yourself while still aligning with your values. Um,
Mm,
Meaning, are you making decisions or talking to yourself like how you would help out a friend, right? Like you would want your friend to make the best decision for them,
right.
even if like they're unsure, like you can help them explore what that is, but like what are your values? Like I value family time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that I'm not working Friday evenings so I can have my like weekly family dinner,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So like kind of thinking long term of how not only your job, but like how you can help structure what your life can look like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And not just like falling into that, oh, I have to settle kind of thing, because
Yeah.
that is not going to help you. Like, it's not going to be beneficial for you. And honestly, I see a lot of people trying to leave the field after that. So, like, just
Hmm.
recognizing that, like, you do need to take the time to figure out what's important to you and what are priorities.
Yeah. And what's important to you as a student is totally different than when you are a
Yeah.
working professional. And it's okay to like try things, explore
Mm-hmm.
them, and say that wasn't for me.
Right, right. Yeah.
Um, Something else to keep in mind is, you've learned ways on how to effectively study and take exams. And so now you can learn and explore and experiment with ways of how to help yourself feel grounded, how to help yourself feel loved, to give yourself gratitude and grace, and like really reconnecting with what brings you joy. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like very general. Like, what do you mean with what brings you joy? Like, what sparks that childhood excitement that you're just like all giddy about and like get excited? Like, for me, it's like taking those first couple bites of food. Like, I do a little food happy dance when,
She does, especially when it's French fries.
yeah, yeah, like I really love food, like
Mhm.
put any type of potato, give it to me. Like,
Yeah.
having a moment where you could pause and take some time to be present with the things that you find are fun, enjoying your time with loved ones, and also
Mm,
just like saying, I did all those really hard things. Like, this is awesome. I get to
yeah.
celebrate myself now.
Right. Treats all around.
Treats all around.
Well, I think in the spirit of treats, right? Like
Yeah.
thinking about too, like one of the biggest things that I feel like is definitely under talked about, and I still feel like I struggle with as an adult, is even just knowing like financial goals and like
Mm-hmm.
what my relationship with money is or what I want it to be, right? And
Yeah.
so thinking about too, like most of the time students are either not working or they're working, but it's like to get the bare minimum to pay their bills, to be able to afford school. Like it's not about living a luxury life, right?
Right.
Like when they're in school. And so then you transition kind of quickly into a professional where you're getting a big, like adult paycheck. And sometimes that can really like make us struggle in some
Mm-hmm.
regards of like like what do I do with this, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes people like clam up and they're like I can't spend any of it, I have to be like a fearful mindset,
Yeah.
right? Like and then some people were like
Ballin'.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think too of like really being intentional, and whether that's like you meet with a financial advisor or even just like doing your own research and
Mm-hmm.
sitting down and figuring out like what do I want my relationship with my money and finances to be? What do I want my goals to be? Like if I'm someone that wants to travel a lot, then like how am I being intentional about setting aside travel money, like my savings, like what
Mm-hmm.
does that look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like and then also just thinking about like do you have trusted people in your life that you can like pick their brain and ask them like about like what do you do to kind of budget, right? I know some people are kind of finicky about talking about money and their finances, and so obviously be respectful of that, right, if that's
Yeah.
a boundary. But like if someone is open to that, like see like what they've done, right? Like what their tips are.
Mhm.
Because I mean, we've all been at this spot
Yeah.
where like now we have money, what do we do? So like
Yeah.
utilize.
Or maybe even some mistakes that they made, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Getting good feedback on like, hey, like, I thought this was going to be a great thing and then it really didn't work out for me. Like, so just kind of hearing that too, like, is like so helpful. Right. And so, like, again, thinking about like, what do I want in terms of like my financial goals, right? Do I want like having like so much money in my savings by so many years out? Do I want so much put away for like a yearly vacation? Do I want to do multiple vacations in a year, right? Like what does that look like? And really just taking the time to learn about budgeting strategies, financial like things in general. And figuring out what feels good for you so that you're not feeling again in that fearful mindset or like, oh crap, I don't know how to manage my money and now I'm struggling to pay bills. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah.
So, yeah, fun times.
Can
Finances are always so fun.
can definitely relate to that. I know like when I first got my first big girl check, I was like, what is this? Like, who gave me all this money? Like, oh, I earned
Literally.
all this money. Oh my gosh. And I wanted to celebrate, but I also knew like I needed to be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard. It was hard to not like go splurge and be like, this is,
YOLO.
yeah, YOLO, basically. Like, I want to buy 20,000 cats right now. Like, no, couldn't do that, you know?
Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
But also, it's like a new way to like being financially responsible and like creating a plan for yourself is another way to build self-trust. Like, not
Mm-hmm.
only are you taking care of the money that you're earning,
Yeah.
and you're protecting like your hard work, but you're
Yeah.
also like protecting the fun that you can have and like those
Right.
personal goals that you set. Like, I want to have a 2-hour massage every other month, you know? So,
Mhm.
how do I need to budget to make that happen?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also thinking about too of I think finances and financial stress is one of like the biggest things to impact people. And
Hmm.
especially if you're in a relationship of any kind, it has a really big impact. So thinking about that, right? Like this seeps into all different parts of your life. And so like how can we be preventative to not have that happen for us going into this career?
Great, great advice. Yes. Yes. Okay. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but another thing that we wanted to highlight is that you're gonna have a lot of free time. Like,
Yeah.
so much free time, meaning like not every second of every day is gonna be studying or work.
Hmm. Right.
Like, you're gonna have a designated work time. So it's super important to set some personal boundaries with yourself. Like, I'm gonna leave my work at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna leave my work brain at work, right? So finding like a technique of like if it's difficult to leave your work brain at work, how can you
Hmm.
help yourself do that? Like, we had a talk earlier this week where someone shared that they would go home and they would like touch the tree outside their house, and
Hmm.
touching that tree would be like, I'm leaving my work here on this tree, but as soon as I
Hmm.
enter my house, I'm just me. I'm just me, not professional me, not work brain me, just me.
Yeah.
So my
Love.
family can enjoy me and I can enjoy my family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One that I've tried is while driving home from work, I'll like roll down my windows and like just kind of imagine like the work armor or the work ash is like flying out the windows,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
regular ash is just having a rock session, jam
Yeah.
session in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. I did that yesterday, actually.
Yay.
Hmm.
Awesome. Yeah. With all that free time, you can explore your personal goals. Like you had all of these professional and academic goals.
Right.
But like circling back to what are your physical goals, social goals, spiritual goals,
Mm,
emotional, mental goals.
yeah. What feels good for you?
Hmm. I put here quality rest.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
your body, your whole system, your brain needs some rest after those years and years and years
Literally.
of
So
learning.
give it the rest.
Yeah, give it the rest. Let it rest and don't feel guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is something that I'm still working on. This next one is what is a tradition you can start with yourself?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Meaning
hard.
like, yeah, it is so hard because we just get caught up in all our responsibilities and all the other roles in our identity, right? Like cat
Mm-hmm.
mom, sister, brother, you know. Um,
Yeah.
we get caught up in all those, but what are some like personal goals
Right.
that you want to
Yeah.
accomplish?
Yeah. Treats every weekend.
Trade treats every weekend. For sure, you know. I put some examples here, attending a weekly exercise class, meditating and or journaling for 10 minutes of your day. So that could
Yeah.
be in the morning, midday, right before you go to bed. Um, reading a chapter of your favorite book every other day.
Yes. I love that one.
Yeah. Or like going to visit your favorite place every other month. That's not your home, right?
Nothing against your home.
Nothing
Like it
against
could
your
be your
home.
favorite place, but
Yeah, like if your favorite place is Whataburger, go to it. If your favorite place is the beach, go to it, right?
yeah.
If your favorite
Yeah.
place is the mall, go to it.
Talking about us now.
If your favorite place is Amazon, go to a coffee shop.
And do some Amazon shopping
Yeah.
with a coffee. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, I know we're starting to wrap up, right? But like, I
Hmm.
think it would be a disservice to not at least put a little bit about imposter syndrome. Because I think there's this, I don't want to say stigma, but I think there's this idea that, once you graduate, you're going to feel just so confident going into the field. Like, you're going to feel like, yes, I know what I'm doing. I feel competent, all these things. It's not always the case, right? Like, I think if anything, we start to feel imposter syndrome in a different way. Like, yeah,
Hmm.
we graduated, right? So we know like we could be a student and we could do the things in the program. But now it's like, okay, can I pass the board exam? Okay, like, how am I going to be in the field working constantly, right? Like,
Yep.
how am I going to like look to the doctors, my peers, whoever I'm working with, right? Like,
Yes.
I think it creeps in a different way and sometimes even more magnified, right? Especially if we felt it during school
Hmm.
and then like it just like transitions and morphs into something bigger. And so I think this is just to say like if you like already struggle with imposter syndrome or like you like just thinking about like future career, you feel anxiety or you're like pit in my stomach kind of thing,
Hmm.
like maybe that's something to start working on. Maybe that's something to start processing or reflecting on like why do I fear like this like position, this career? Like what is the narrative about myself that could be
Hmm.
holding me back? Um and also too like more than happy like utilize your CAPS team and
Yes.
find outside therapists after graduation like to process this because it's hard like
Yeah.
and it's more common than you think and it can make you feel very isolated and like you're alone and the only one struggling
Hmm.
but in reality a lot of people deal with this,
Hmm.
myself included, and so like just being sure like to be proactive and preventative about that and start giving yourself the tools to work on even just more like confident mindset around yourself and knowing you're not expected to be perfect going into the field. You literally just graduated. But
Hmm.
what you are expected to do is to be able to take feedback, learn, and grow.
Yes.
So
That was
that's my two.
beautiful.
Thanks,
Boom.
friend.
Yes. So as always, we end and wrap up with a quote that kind of highlights what we talked about.
Yeah, yeah. I think the quote for this time, like, I think it encompasses a lot more even than just what we talked about today, but I liked it because I'm just gonna let you as the listener like take from it and resonate with it what you will. But the
Mm-hmm.
quote is from Catherine Pulsifer. I hope I said that right. But it's every day is a chance to begin again. Don't focus on the failures of yesterday, but start today with positive thoughts and expectations. Any like just for me reading that, I think we beat ourselves up a lot, especially going through school, right? About like, I could have studied more, I could have gotten a higher grade or whatever, right? I could have done this strategy or this technique with a patient, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we beat ourselves up a lot.
Yeah.
And I think like maybe being intentional about before I go into this career into like my first job in as a professional, like we're gonna like strip away, right, the negativity of all the judgment and the critiques we had of ourselves as a student. And
Mm-hmm.
like what would it hurt to just like give ourselves a clean slate to like begin again, right?
Yes.
So
Giving yourself
hopefully,
that space and grace.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Space and grace. Oh my God, I'm gonna put that on a shirt.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I would like one. Thank you. Put in an order for Ash.
I will. I will. But that brings us to the end of this episode. I think we did good on keeping it
I
shorter.
know. So proud of us.
Yes, give us feedback if you like the shorter episodes versus the long one because we get winded, but like we
Mhm.
just like to talk. So if you like the shorter ones, then tell us. But next month, stay tuned for oh my God, I'm so excited for this topic. The impact of generational trauma. Dun dun dun.
OMG.
And I can't wait to have this conversation with you. And I hope that our listeners are also excited, but maybe also anxious at the same time because
Yeah.
it's going to be gnarly. But
Mhm.
with that, thank you for tuning in as always. We will see you next month. Bye.
Bye.